Story number 1. The first time Noah stepped into St. Alora's hospital, the air felt heavier than it should have. The lights in the hallway flickered not from power issues, but as though something unseen moved through them. He wasn't a doctor, not a nurse. He was a security contractor assigned to the building after a string of mysterious accidents, most of which involved staff members swearing they'd seen patients who weren't listed on the hospital registry. His first night on the job, the place was nearly silent. Only the hum of ancient radiators and the distant buzz of malfunctioning lights filled the air. Noah did his rounds on the 4th floor, a level long closed after a fire 20 years ago. Still, his orders were clear. Patrol it once every 2 hours. He unlocked the rusted elevator and stepped inside. Creaked all the way up. As the doors opened on the 4th floor, a sudden coldness poured in. His breath fogged. The hallway before him was darker than the others, even though the same bulbs lined the ceiling. He stepped out. Every footstep echoed like a scream. Halfway through the hallway, he noticed a room with its door ajar. Room 417. The number had been scratched up, the metal warped as if by claws. He leaned in, shining his flashlight. A hospital bed. Dust everywhere. But the bed, it had indentations, as if someone had been lying there. He stepped in. Suddenly, the door slammed behind him. Noah spun around, nearly dropping his flashlight. It flickered wildly as the temperature dropped. Then a voice, raspy, almost choking, whispered, "Get out!" He tried the door. Locked. He turned again. Now the bed was empty, but in the far corner of the room, a figure stood, pale, draped in a faded hospital gown. Its head tilted unnaturally to the side, dark sockets where eyes should have been. Noah screamed, banging on the door. The figure took one step forward, then another. The lights blinked off entirely. In total darkness, Noah heard the dragging sound of feet, slowly crossing the floor toward him. When the lights came back on, the figure was gone. The door was open. Noah bolted. He didn't stop until he reached the main floor, his heart pounding. He filed a report but told no one about the figure. He didn't want to seem crazy, but he needed to know more. The next night, he returned with his phone recording. Same time, same floor, same hallway. As he passed room 417, he didn't stop. But from the other side of the door, he heard gasping. Wet, painful breathing. He turned to look and saw a new name on the door. Patient. Noah Keller. His name. The door burst open. The same figure lunged. But this time, it grabbed him. He screamed, dropping his phone. The footage recovered from that night showed only darkness, until the camera flickered back on. A hospital room. Noah strapped to a bed. Nurses around him with no faces. Just skin stretched across blank heads. A voice whispered from behind the lens. He's not going anywhere now. Noah never left that hospital. And yet, every so often, guards report seeing him in the halls, clipboard in hand, asking if they've checked room 417. Story number 2. Jason never believed in ghosts, not even after years of working late-night maintenance shifts in eerie places. But Allendale Medical Facility was different. Built in 1923 and closed in 1997 after a series of disturbing patient deaths, the hospital was now undergoing renovations. Jason was part of the security team hired to protect the crew's tools and keep trespassers out. His shift began at 11 p.m. and lasted until 7 a.m. The first few nights were uneventful, just the usual creaks and groans of an old building. But on his 5th night, he noticed something strange. Room 9B kept unlocking itself. The master control showed it locked, but every time he passed it, the heavy wooden door would be cracked open. Just slightly, enough to see that the lights were on inside. Jason reported it to his supervisor, who waved it off. "The wiring's all messed up," he said. "The doors don't hold properly. Just check it and move on." That night, at exactly 2:33 a.m., Jason entered 9B. The lights flickered violently as he stepped in. The air inside was frigid, despite the heaters running throughout the building. The room was empty, just 4 beds, a broken cabinet, and a sink with rust around the edges. But then Jason heard it, a sob, faint, female. coming from under one of the beds. He knelt down, shined his flashlight underneath, and saw a pair of pale, childlike feet. "Hello?" he whispered. The feet shifted. Suddenly, a hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. It was cold, ice cold, and unnaturally strong. Jason screamed and yanked himself free, stumbling back. The flashlight fell and rolled, illuminating the space under the bed fully. Nothing was there. He ran. Back in the hallway, he slammed the door shut and radioed for backup. No one answered. Static hissed through the radio like a slow breath. That was the beginning. Each night after that, room 9B would open, and each time he passed it, he saw more. A woman standing in the corner facing the wall, whispering numbers. An old man in a tattered hospital gown crawling across the ceiling like a spider. A nurse with no eyes, holding a tray of rusty tools and mouthing, "Time for your medicine." Jason tried to quit, but the contractor said there was no one else willing to work nights. Desperate for money, Jason stayed. On his 9th night, everything changed. The power died. The backup generators failed. The emergency lights flickered red through the corridors like a heartbeat. He heard the sound of wheels, gurney wheels, but not from one direction, from every direction. He turned in a circle, his flashlight struggling to stay lit. Shadows darted past the corners of the halls. Whispers filled the air. Moans, screams, prayers. Then, he saw the hallway camera footage flicker on the security screen behind him. It was showing room 9B. Inside, 6 figures stood in a circle. Each one was missing something. One had no face, another no arms, one hovered a foot off the ground. In the middle, a small figure sat on a stool. A little girl in a hospital gown. She looked up at the camera and smiled. Suddenly, the screen exploded in sparks. The entire security room went black. Jason ran for the emergency exit. He didn't care about protocols anymore. He needed to get out. But the halls twisted. He swore he was running toward the front lobby, but every turn led him back to the same place. Room 9B. The door was wide open. Light flooded from inside like a beacon. A whisper trickled from inside. "Come in, Jason." He hadn't told anyone his name. Trembling, he stepped inside. The door shut behind him. The footage from that night ends there. When police arrived the next morning after receiving an emergency call from an unknown number traced to the hospital, they found no sign of Jason, only his flashlight. It was lying in the middle of room 9B, pointing up toward the ceiling. Written on the ceiling in blood. "One more bed filled." Story number 3. The elevator doors opened with a rusty wheeze on the abandoned 13th floor of Brookhaven Medical Center. Dr. Elena Morris had no business being up there. She knew the hospital had sealed the floor off 20 years ago after the infamous fire. But tonight, something pulled her there. A file. A single patient file that mysteriously appeared on her desk. Yellowed and burned around the edges. Marked with one word in red ink. Return. She couldn't ignore it. The file contained the name Daniel Greaves, a patient who had died in 1997. But there was no official record of his death. No cause. No attending physician. Just a hand-drawn diagram of a human body with crude excess scratched over the eyes and mouth. The lights flickered above her head as she stepped out onto the 13th floor. Everything smelled like smoke and antiseptic. The hallway stretched unnaturally long. The floor tiles cracked and darkened from heat. She passed burnt-out hospital rooms, some still bearing half-melted signage. Ward C, Pediatrics, Psych Holding. She paused outside room 136. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was a bed with restraints, and above it, the scorch marks of hands pressed to the ceiling. 5-fingered, perfectly human. But the fingers were twice as long as they should have been. A flicker of movement. She turned, nothing. The door slammed shut behind her. Her flashlight sputtered. That's when she heard the breathing. Not hers. Heavy. Shallow. Ragged. Coming from beneath the bed. She knelt slowly. There was a man curled there, naked, his skin blackened and peeled like old bark. His mouth was stitched shut with wire. His eyelids were stapled open. When he saw her, he began violently shaking, mouthing words he couldn't speak. his eyes wild with desperation. She stumbled back, knocking over a tray. The man shrieked, a horrible, guttural sound escaping through his torn throat. And then he vanished. Completely. Elena bolted into the hallway. But it wasn't the same hallway anymore. It was full. Nurses with eyeless sockets pushing wheelchairs of screaming patients. Doctors sawing open chests with no anesthesia. Children laughing as they drew on the walls with red crayon that smelled unmistakably like iron. She ran. Every hallway twisted into another, like a maze with no exits. She reached the nurse's station, only to find a nurse standing there motionless. Her head was tilted completely backward. Her spine snapped in half, yet she stood upright. "You shouldn't have come," she rasped. "He doesn't like visitors." "Who?" Elena begged. "Who is he?" The nurse's head snapped forward violently, and her jaw unhinged. She screamed so loud the walls cracked. Elena passed out. When she woke, she was lying in room 137, her wrists strapped to the bed. The room was dark. Only the EKG monitor beeped. It was hooked to her own chest. She tried to scream. Her voice was gone. In the corner, a silhouette sat in a chair. A man. Burnt. Mouth wired shut. He leaned forward. In his hand was the same file she had found earlier. He opened it, pulled out a scalpel, and scratched one more line under the column labeled "Returned." The EKG beeped faster. She felt the scalpel press against her chest. Then silence. The next morning, security found her unconscious at her desk in the ER. File still open, chest untouched. But she couldn't speak, couldn't write. Her eyes tracked every movement, but she never reacted to sound. A broken mind behind functioning eyes. She remained that way until her death. Room 136 was finally demolished in 2023. But the wall behind where the bed had been was preserved in a university archive for medical history. Carved into the concrete in blood-red scratches are 3 words, over and over: "He still breathes." Story number 4. The power went out just after 2:03 a.m. inside St. Delilah Asylum, a century-old hospital that had long since earned a reputation for being more graveyard than clinic. But on the night of October 14, 2019, the hospital admitted a single emergency case. A man found convulsing and whispering in the middle of Highway 9. His skin was cold, his eyes unblinking, and all he kept muttering was, "Don't let them take me to floor 0. Floor 0 didn't exist. At least, that's what the night staff believed, until the elevator took Nurse Amy Santiago there without her pressing a single button. She was headed to pathology in the basement. But as soon as the doors slid shut, the panel lights blinked. G1, then no number at all. Just blackness. The elevator stopped. The doors creaked open. There was no hallway, only a long tunnel, low and moist, lit by flickering overhead bulbs that buzzed like dying insects. Water dripped steadily from above, though the air smelled dry, dead. She should have turned back. Instead, she stepped out. Her shoes splashed into black water that was only an inch deep but ice-cold. The hallway stretched far, ending at a set of rusted double doors labeled simply, "Extraction." She opened them. The room inside had hospital beds, at least a dozen, arranged in a perfect circle. Each bed had leather restraints. Each bed was occupied. But the bodies weren't living, nor were they exactly dead. They breathed. Slow, shallow breaths. Some twitched. Others whispered. A few stared directly at her, though their pupils were milky white and unseeing. She turned to leave. The doors were gone. Behind her, one of the bodies sat up. It was the man from Highway 9. His mouth opened, and a swarm of flies buzzed out. "You brought me back," he hissed. "So now they'll feed again." Then the lights went out. Amy screamed, but the sound never reached her own ears. She wasn't alone. Hands, dozens of them, reached up from beneath the beds, elongated, bony, slick with something thick and warm. They gripped her legs, her arms, her waist. Something slid around her neck. A voice whispered in her ear. It was hers, but reversed. "Imit kamotid na yet ta estat." "That's what they want to do to me." She blacked out. When she woke, she was in a hospital bed, but it wasn't on any charted floor. No windows, no nurses, just white curtains and the distant sound of wheels squeaking, like a gurney being pushed down a long hallway. Then came the scratching. It wasn't at the door. It was inside the walls. She tried to get up, couldn't. The 4 in her arm was pumping black fluid. Her skin began to gray, her veins blackened, and her heart monitor started beeping faster, 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 then flatlined. Except she wasn't dead. She could still feel everything. She lay there for hours, maybe days, until the room slowly filled with smoke. Through the haze, a figure appeared, clad in an ancient nurse uniform, her eyes sewn shut, her jaw hung loosely by muscle strands. In her hands, a syringe longer than Amy's forearm. She leaned close,